and welcome to the Game Master how-to series from the Army Painter. Today we're going to create a water effect for your dungeon setting. In this short tutorial, we're going to demonstrate just how simple it is to craft your own terrain with the materials and tools included in the Game Master Dungeons & Caverns core set. First, we must prepare our XPS foam. Sanding it will give it added texture and help the paint adhere better. Next, you'll begin marking off your tiles 1 inch by 1 inch using the steel ruler included in the set. Using the scenery knife, you'll begin scoring the tile lines. It's important that you just lightly score the foam and not cut all the way through. You'll find out why in later steps. Now we'll mark off the perpendicular cross sections and we'll repeat the scoring process to create the foundation for our tiles. Now using a handy graphite pencil, we'll reinforce the tile lines. Using an old rock or brick, you'll stamp the brick into the foam to create added texture. You'll notice how simply the surface of the brick is mimicked onto the foam. If you'd like to further weather your tiles, using a graphite pencil you can draw cracks in the stone to give it a simple aged effect. You can now cut your tiles into 2 even pieces. Using cocktail sticks and a fresh piece of foam, you will secure the 3 tiles together. The toothpicks act as reinforcement and help to keep the 3 pieces stable so that you can cut mirrored shapes using our hot wire foam cutter. Slowly and carefully trace the jagged edges to your liking. Repeat this process around each edge of the water effect, leaving a 2-tile entryway so you can fit modular tiles up against it. Remove the bottom piece of foam, and with the top 2 pieces, you'll use our hot wire foam cutter to cut the inner shape of the lake. Leave enough room for the bases of your models to fit around it. Carefully remove the hot wire and remove the inner piece of foam. On the uppermost tile, we'll cut a slightly larger shape, and when layered, we will have a simple waterfall feature. Sand the bottoms to each piece of foam to ensure that the glue adheres to it. Apply your XPS foam sculpting glue and carefully adhere the 3 pieces together. With your tiles cut, you can now begin to add even more realistic texture to them. Start by applying our XPS foam glue to random spots on the tile. Using the wash brush, spread out the glue to the shape that you desire. Then sprinkle the Game Master scenery sand on top of the glue. Once the glue is dried, you can shake off the excess. Don't worry if you make a mess, you can always reuse any leftover sand for later projects. To give the lake bed a more fluid look, you'll want to apply a generous layer of the XPS foam sculpting glue inside of it. You can use a wash brush to smooth out the glue for good even coverage. And as the glue begins to set, you can use the brush to create subtle ripples and waves. In a well-ventilated area, give your dungeon and subterranean spray primer a good shake and begin applying a smooth, even coat. When you're finished priming, clean the nozzle by spraying upside down until pigment stops emitting from the nozzle. Using cavern base and a large dry brush, you'll apply your first base coat to the cavern tiles. Be sure to get good, even, and solid coverage, but it's okay if some of the primer is left in the recesses. This will only add more shadow and depth to the piece. Next, you'll want to apply a dry brush of cavern highlights using your large dry brush. Apply paint to the bristles and remove the excess paint on a towel, leaving only some remaining pigment, then lightly flick that pigment across the edges of the details on the model to create simple and effective highlights. You'll follow the same technique with cavern effects, this time being more conservative with your application and only applying it to the most extreme hard edges. Now with a watered down application of Brink Black, you'll apply a shade over top of the rocky texture on the base. Because it's thinned down, you can feather out the pigment to create a nice natural gradation. With Dungeon Base and a medium dry brush, we'll begin base coating all of the rocky features on the tile. Then we'll apply a dry brush highlight of Dungeon Highlights to the rocks, just to pick out the details. Finally, we'll apply a highlight using Dungeon Effects, this time being very conservative, only picking out the most extreme details on the rocks. Go ahead and add some subterranean wash to your palette, and using the wash brush, begin feathering in this color randomly around the stones and other parts of the tiles to create an aged and mossy effect. We're going to pull some paints from the Army Painter War Paints range next, starting with Hydra Turquoise. We're going to apply a very smooth base coat to the bottom of the lake. Take your time here and ensure that you get good, even coverage. We recommend that you apply a second solid coat to ensure that the bottom of our pool is a rich and vibrant blue. Next, we'll apply a thinned down application of Royal Cloak, this time at the mouth and center of the lake, and subtly feather it into the Hydra Turquoise for a nice simple blend. We're slowly building up a transition between these two colors. We'll mix a bit of Dungeon Effects with our Royal Cloak and focus this even more so towards the mouth and inside of the lake, stippling and feathering this in to give the water a nice rippled appearance. With a bit of XPS foam glue, our Dungeon Tufts, and tweezer from the Army Painter tool range, we'll begin applying some foliage to our tiles in random areas. And now to really give the water a fluid appearance, we'll apply a liberal application of our XPS foam glue to the pool. You can begin by applying this carefully right out of the bottle, and then smoothing it out with a medium dry brush. After a bit of time, the glue will dry clear for a watery effect. And our water pool is now complete. If you followed along, then you've just learned how simple, easy, and fun it can be to create your own cavern terrain with the tools and materials found inside the Game Master Dungeons & Caverns core set, made for adventurers by the Army Painter.